Your life journey doesn't stand still, and neither should your wealth. Welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast. All right, welcome back to Wealth on the Move, the podcast. I'm your host, Will Hoffman.
And I'm your co-host, Brynn Tarbuck.
Today, we're going to address something that is a bit sensitive, something that is necessary to talk about, but should be talked about, should be spoken about, but unfortunately often isn't. And that is money and marriage. And we're going to talk about some essential financial moves to do before you say I do.
Easy to overlook.
Yes. You know, in the excitement of getting married, we often forget these things, and they're important. And why they're important is because we all know that the statistics, half of all marriages end in divorce. And unfortunately, 39% of those divorces are related to money issues and money conversations. We want to make sure that we're at least having the conversations, especially from 22 years of experience of what I've seen, what folks can benefit from, conversations that in our opinion could have ended this. We've worked with clients through divorce. And I'm just going to tell you it sucks. There's no other way to put it. It sucks. I hate it. It's one of the least favorite parts of this job and this business is, you know, that's just inevitable. And almost all of the time, if money was the issue, these conversations weren't had before. So if you're listening to this, if you're getting ready to walk down the aisle, whether it's your first time or, you know, a second or even third marriage, these are conversations that are a necessity. And that we want to make sure we're giving you this information and understanding what discussions that we've seen that you could have and maybe head those off.
That statistic alone is just insane. 30-something% of divorces are because of these conversations that weren't had about money. And so it's important to be transparent about everything when you get married. But I think a lot of people overlook that money aspect. They think about, oh, you know, my dog becomes your dog. We'll move into your house. This is where we're going to, you know, go to the grocery store. But I think it's easy to kind of forget about all those things that you have before you and that you're going to have in your future as well. So being transparent is very important.
And money is a tough conversation. We know that's the motive of this podcast is to take those conversations and take the tips and tricks and things that we've seen and learned and be able to apply it to busy families, active retirees that are moving through life. And listen, your money follows you. We just had Ashley Sherrick on who talked a lot about the legal aspects of money and you know, that conversation is what prompted me to want to do this episode because, you know, documents and the paperwork and the processes and things are one part of it, but this is the things that aren't had or the conversations that aren't had that we want to make sure people are discussing.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened yet, that conversation between Will and Ashley was great. So many insightful tips that she gave, not only just for, I mean, you would think maybe, you know, estate planning, you think of, you know, in that retirement stage or being older, but that's not the case. I mean, she was listing things that I should be doing.
Right.
At my age, she was listing things that my sister should be doing it when she turns 18. I mean, so there's things that, very insightful, just awesome girl. I hope we can have her again.
Yeah, we definitely will. You know, the first thing to do, and this may be logical, but unfortunately it's the first thing that gets avoided, is having open and honest conversations about money. What your thoughts are about money, how you like to earn and save and spend. You may uncover some differences, but it's much better to uncover these differences in an open and transparent conversation than it is 7 years down the road after living with regret or spite or angst and anger about money conversations. Because, listen, we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different financial philosophies. We all have different financial philosophies. But making sure that this is an open and honest conversation about that. I'll say this, and this is just a tiny bit of insight into the Hoffman household. It was easy because Jamie and I share a lot of the same philosophies. We have a building and an accumulation and abundance mentality where we know what we're trying to build, whether it's with Hoffman Wealth Management, her career, with our boys and our family. So a lot of that alignment was innate. And I mean, again, very lucky and blessed that it was that easy and that innate. But it isn't always because of the varying philosophies and seeing what and we're going to talk about that here, about more of that in a second, but just having that open and honest conversation about your thoughts and philosophies. What's the current, social media video trend? We listen and we don't judge.
Yes, we listen and we don't judge. Exactly.
That's a great philosophy
I
to
love
take
that.
into this conversation, though, is to listen and not be judgmental about financial backgrounds and financial philosophies.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no sense in being bashful about that, and your thoughts about money, your thoughts about accumulation, your career objectives are going to move into this. Listen, that's how we earn, that's how we grow, that's how we make. So
Exactly.
having all of that in an open and honest and transparent conversation is important.
And I honestly, I could see how it could be easy to kind of overlook it, and you think, oh, well, we both, gonna get married, we both have a job, we both work, we both make money, we'll be fine. We don't need to have this conversation. But what if you don't know that you might be a saver and you might love to
Sure.
save, and like you said, you're an accumulator. But what if that person that you're going to marry loves to, every paycheck they pay their bills, then the rest of it they're going and
Right.
buying things and all that.
And listen, careers are so different that you may be in a volatile career that deals with a lot of layoffs, a lot of transition.
Yes.
I have a friend that it seems like every 3 to 5 years he's looking, because it's just the nature of his profession. He's great at what he does.
Right.
He's a change agent and fixes a lot of companies when he goes in there, but fixes them and then is looking for the next opportunity, or he's fixed them and now they're moving on to somebody else. And that's just
exactly
the nature of his
Yeah.
profession. So understanding that, the profession your spouse is in and what happens with that is also important, because again, our careers are important to us. Our businesses are our lifeline. This is how we earn. This is how we take care of our families. This is how we'll inevitably save for and finance a 30 or 40 or even 50-year retirement. So understanding that volatility is very, very important. Something else to understand is doing a financial inventory prior to walking down the aisle, understanding each other's credit scores, understanding assets that folks are bringing into the marriage, liabilities and debt that folks are bringing into the marriage, obligations that folks have. Again, because of the unfortunate divorce rate, a lot of folks have financial obligations to previous marriages that you need to understand. A lot of folks have school loans and things that you need to understand. When we talk about this, I have to think of the episode of How I Met Your Mother, when they're trying to buy their first house and Marshall doesn't know that Lily has an exceptional amount of credit card debt because she is a shopaholic. And he thinks his law school loans are why they can't buy a house, and it's because Lily has like a 100 credit score or something, because she has such an exceptional amount of debt. So understanding all of that stuff is very, very important, and making that checklist, understanding what you have, what you don't have, what you would. I think that inventory should also include what you would like to have, what you would like.
I mean, you're going to build something together with someone else, and
what you would like to achieve, accumulate, types of homes you would like to have, types of cars you prefer to drive. All of those things are important. You'd hate to have a surprise when someone. And listen, I'm 46, so I'm not bashful about saying this. Midlife crisis has happened. Okay. And all of a sudden you come home and there's a sports car in the driveway. And the other spouse is like, well, what's this?
Yep.
What your partner is surprised and confused and like, oh, I've always wanted one of these. I didn't know that. So, having that conversation is important.
So do I need to call Jamie and prepare her for the next few years that this might be?
No,
okay.
I've had been there, done that. I was able to take advantage of the COVID car environment and buy it, and then unload it when used cars were still at a good price.
Perfect.
And been there, done that. Have the T-shirt and
did it in a financial smart way.
Yeah,
still married
actually,
afterward.
I wouldn't say smart. That was a financial lucky way. That
okay.
There was no strategy there. It was, it's time, and then was able to unload it. And
I love that.
I would love to have a sports car again. I would love to have a whole garage full of dream cars. But just not in the cards right now.
Right.
But And then when you have these conversations, please approach them with curiosity, with open-mindedness, with empathy, because everybody's background and philosophy is about money or so different. That's listen, we're starting down a path together, and we want to make sure that you're being open and communicative, because that only helps things.
Right. And like you said, you want to talk about what you want for the future too, because you're not just talking about, short term. Yeah, we're going to get married. What's going to happen the next 5 years? But this is going to be, you're hoping when you say I do, it's forever. So you
Right.
need this plan to carry out, and you need to plan short term and long term. So if those beliefs or whatever don't line up, got to make them line up
Yeah,
in the beginning.
sure
So
do.
not to say if you sit down and this checklist isn't, your beliefs aren't the same, not to get married, but definitely the conversation to have and get stuff in
Right.
place so that
Well, and to understand, and this is a great segue into the next conversation. The law, and I'm sure Ashley would agree with this, the law views marriage as the merging and protecting of assets.
Huh.
Okay? The law doesn't
Okay.
view it as who should love who can love who. It
Yeah.
is the merger and protectors of assets. It's contract law. And every state has different laws about the mergers and protections of assets. And
Oh,
thinking
okay.
about that and setting joint financial goals and expectations is very, very important. Whether it's short-term goals as in saving for the wedding, saving for the honeymoon, or long-term goals, buying in a house, retirement goals, where you want to retire. When we are newlyweds, we're not thinking about when we want to retire. That's the last mission, or probably the last thing on our minds. But
But
it's
it's important to
important.
think about
Yes.
and have in mind. Yeah.
Um, Again, you're building a joint financial life together, whether accounts are separate, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But whether accounts are separate or together, every state's going to have their own version of the law and how they view that contract and how they view those assets. Making sure you understand that. Shared financial plan is very, very important. Shared protection is very, very important when it comes to insurance. And that's not just life insurance, and we're going to talk about that as well, but also homeowners insurance, auto insurance, all of that stuff. When you're buying insurance, credit scores have an impact. Driving
Yeah.
records have an impact. And if one of you is a better or worse driver, that's going to have an impact on the
Yeah.
cost of your auto insurance.
That's right.
It's just the way it goes. So making sure that you understand it, that you are creating a joint financial life, set those joint financial goals together, prioritize them, understand that if goals are different, how you achieve both. I know that that's our mission when we're working with our clients, is
Mhm.
understanding how we're going to try to achieve everybody's goal. And, also in my opinion, what makes a great marriage is your goal becomes my goal and my goal becomes yours.
Yeah.
And that's, God knows Jamie has followed me to multiple marathons because that's what I've wanted to do. And hopefully I've been as supportive as she has, and understanding that, listen, goals, your goal becomes my goal at this point. And understanding that philosophy and that approach is just going to make these conversations much easier.
Right.
It's going to make the accumulation much easier. That's, we want to see successful folks. We don't want to go down the other
No,
path.
never, never. We don't ever want a client to be coming in because they're going through a divorce and that's the
Right.
first time that they needed us. But so the burning question, everything should be together, work together, make goals together, make plans together. Should your money be together? And I know you have some strong thoughts about this. We've talked about this prior, but
this is a lightning rod for sure. And I can understand why it's a lightning rod. That's
okay.
not lost on me, but I do have a very strong opinion about this. And I think that merging bank accounts is important. I don't know why I'm hesitating, because I'm not bashful about that. I'm not bashful about that with our clients. Not bashful about that at home.
No, I mean, you said Ashley would agree with you that, would you say the
I
law of,
think the law views it that way.
yeah, merging?
Now, that said, financial independence is important for a lot of people. It's important to me. It's important to me for our family. Financial independence that's always been my major value when it comes to money, is independence. So not wanting to merge everything is, to me, understandable.
Okay.
I just have the opinion that if you're not merging everything, at least understanding everything is. Again, I understand why folks don't. People come from a plethora of financial backgrounds and financial philosophies and financial trauma that they've seen occur. So I understand why folks may be hesitant. The way I would coach somebody through that is merge something. Start with something, whether that's a joint checking account to pay bills, whether that is a joint investment account to try to achieve some joint goal together. I do think that that's important. Now, I'm going to preface that by also saying that if folks are entering a second marriage, keeping things separate may be more important than your first, because there could be financial obligations that are following you from your first marriage. There could be child support payments. There could be alimony payments. When you're merging households, you're merging money also. And if there are other children from other households, that's not lost on me either. And maybe at that point, keeping things separate becomes important, but I still think something should be merged together.
Okay. And what's the benefit of that?
Just to make sure the goals align. Honestly, the other thing is just to make sure there's as little resentment as possible.
Yeah. Transparency.
If one partner earns more than the other and is accumulating more outside of what's joint, it becomes a potential argument, it becomes potential resentment, but also those financial obligations could become potential resentment. So you're using my money to pay for that when that's we want to make sure that everybody's philosophies are discussed and encountered, because, families, we say, it all the time, or you hear it all the time. You don't just marry the person, you marry their family. Right?
Yeah.
And with those families come different financial philosophies. And in a lot of worlds and in a lot of things, both philosophies could be correct. There's more than one way to save. There's more than one way to earn. You could be merging a business owner family with a traditional corporate W-2 family. You could be merging, those are the best examples I can come up with right now, but neither's wrong. Every financial philosophy comes from somewhere. And it's coming from either, hey, I watched my grandparents leave a beautiful estate, or I watched my parents only ever fight about money. Michelle Walter and I had a great conversation about this. I have to remember the episode, if it was when we immediately transitioned to Wealth on the Move, or while we were still...
She was our first guest on
while we were
Wealth
still
on the Move.
the Monetary Mixtape, and it may have even been when I was on her podcast.
Okay.
We'll link the appropriate show in the comments, but those traumas, they're legitimate. They're real. Watching those things is important, and it's important to understand. It's important to understand where your partner's bringing those philosophies in from. So making sure that you're understanding that you're budgeting for two people now, or you're budgeting for two families under one roof, and going through that it's an important conversation to have and be sensitive to and be open to. But I still believe that merging something is important. And even if everything stays in separate accounts, having one familial financial plan is important. So that at the very least, you're seeing everything together and how it's impacted as you move. Even if it is separate checking, separate bills, who's responsible for what, having an important joint financial plan, because, listen, that's what you're trying to achieve, I hope. So you're trying to grow. So that becomes something merged is important, at least in my opinion. There may be somebody else who has a different philosophy, and it may work for them, and it may be very accurate. I'm going off of my 22 years of experience, and that's what I've seen be the most successful. Safety nets also become important in that joint conversation. We had mentioned that different careers take different paths all the time. Different emergencies occur for different reasons. Making sure that you're at the very least, if you join something together, join your emergency fund, so that, it's a joint level of support in addition to a joint financial support that you're there to protect and to help in an emergency.
And how would that help? Would the jointness help, like you say, emergency? I mean, you don't want to ever think about the worst happening,
Sure.
but what if something would happen to one of the spouses? Does having that joint or merged, does that help the process with any, I mean, I'm sure it,
I think it just comes from mostly from a supportive place.
but having access to those
Oh
funds
yeah,
and stuff
having
would
having
be
making sure that
easier if you're joint, right?
yes,
After one passes. Yeah.
after one passes, if one's incapacitated, if one is away, or
Right. Right.
if I'm
Yeah.
traveling and the emergency occurs, Jamie needs to have access to it.
Yeah.
So that becomes important. Emergencies don't happen on a time clock, or that's why they're an emergency. So making
Exactly.
sure that
Exactly.
accessibility is important.
So right. So I mean, from that conversation, if what I get is if one thing's merged, at least have an emergency
Yes,
account because, like you said, you don't want your spouse to be out of town and all the emergency money's under their name and you can't
sure.
get to it and they're across the country.
Yep.
So important, very important. All right, and then what about when it comes to a legal perspective? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit with Ashley and some of the important things to have in line there.
Yeah. Because again, and I'm gonna break this into two areas. Inevitably, what will be discussed heading into marriage is going to be a prenuptial agreement because we're all coming from different family backgrounds. Because the stats don't lie. Folks are marrying later in life after they've accumulated some things that they may want to protect. It's an important conversation. It's a hard conversation. That's not lost on me either. But it's an important conversation. Protecting maybe generational wealth is important in that conversation.
Yeah.
If parents or grandparents have built something that they want to make sure is as protected as possible, understanding that is vital. If you've built something that you want to protect, if you've accumulated, I don't think entering that conversation, I don't think anybody's wrong. I really don't. I don't think anybody's wrong in wanting one and not wanting one. I don't think that it's probably the deepest part of the conversation. It needs to be entered with the most open-mindedness.
Okay.
I get it. I really do. I understand it. It may be counterintuitive to my philosophy of how important it is to merge things, but I don't think that conversation should be entered with any spite or any anger or any angst. It needs to be entered from a place of understanding family backgrounds. I really think that it's very, very important. Now, that said, the other stuff when it comes to legal and protective financial matters, estates, wills, guardianship, is it's so important. And we haven't even talked about life insurance yet. And I'm going to get to that on a separate matter. But talking with, having a family attorney is important. Having a process that your assets are protected, your children are protected, the guardianship is important. Listen, we are working our butts off.
Yeah.
And I say that we collectively, we as humans, listen, the United States is the home to some of, if not the most productive people in the world. We're working our butts off to create, to educate ourselves, to improve our lives, and
all the time.
Protecting those merits and the rewards of that labor is important. And it's important to have a financial mindset there, and it's important to have an attorney that helps you do that as accurately as you want them done. So understanding that is important. Whether they need to be in trusts or your wills updated, I'm going to leave those answers up to the attorneys right now. But going through that process is so important. And it's so important that maybe even before you say I do, because listen, you say I do, you go on a honeymoon and the unthinkable happens, you've got a new beneficiary in the eyes of the law. So making sure that you're having those conversations and doing that is so vital. Meet with an attorney, update your wills, update your trust if you have them, update any estate plans, update who's in charge of making those decisions, update beneficiaries on things that you can, retirement plans, IRAs, annuities. Now we're going to talk about life insurance. Getting life insurance is important. Using life insurance to protect yourself should be the main goal. Again, philosophy. Protecting your income, protecting your loved ones. That's why you buy life insurance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other strategies and a lot of other ways that you can use life insurance, and they are in-depth, good conversations for us to have on another episode with folks that specialize in that. But when we are putting a financial plan together for somebody, making sure that liabilities are protected, children can be cared for, all of that is very, very important. And making sure that those beneficiaries get updated, so important. There are so many stories about folks not updating beneficiaries, and ex-spouses are now in court with new spouses over who gets what when. It's ugly. It's something nobody wants to go through. The grief is bad enough.
Right.
Making sure that you're keeping track of that stuff is important. We're still in January. It's the beginning of the year. Make financial organization one of your resolutions. If you haven't yet, get those things updated. Keep good records. Save them. Store them. Hopefully your financial advisor has a method to store them like we do, and keep those things protected because they're important. And don't think they're not. I'll change that beneficiary later. What's the worst that could happen?
You never know.
We've seen the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
And the worst thing happening is terrible enough. Don't compound that.
Right.
So it's a lot, and it's especially a lot when you're supposed to be in one of the happiest times of your life. So I don't want to detract from that. If you're listening to this, if this is your first time here and you're listening to this and you're listening to it because you're getting married, congratulations.
Yes.
We're happy for you. These are important steps to make sure that it's a long and happy union, or at the very least, we've done our part to make sure that the financial stuff isn't what's getting in the way of a long and happy union.
Or that it doesn't get in the way 10 years down the road from now. You don't want to have a happy marriage and then all of a sudden something happened.
Yep.
You get this done now, get married, and have the plan for the rest of your marriage so you can set that aside, because life's going to throw a lot of other stuff at you that you're going to have to take care of too. So have the financial part set aside and then plan as much as you can.
Yes. If we can help, please reach out to us. Website's hoffmanwealth.com. We're very active on LinkedIn. Find me under Will Hoffman. Find our Hoffman Wealth Management LinkedIn page, our Facebook page, YouTube channel. We're active everywhere. Find us. Ask us for help, please. Just don't ask somebody for help is probably the bigger message there in getting these things accomplished.
Yes. And if you want to, we alluded to the episode with Ashley. If you haven't listened to that, that's on our YouTube and also on wealthonthemove.com. So
we'll put that show in the show notes also.
We will throw that in there too. Yeah, there's plenty of ways to find us and get in touch with us. Well, until then, guys, keep your wealth moving and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Hoffman Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.